Hey, can people hear me? Nice. Cool. All right. Guess we're good. Uh, so I'm trying to come up with somewhat of a format for this thing with like a housekeeping session to start off with, and then like the main content, and then like a parking lot section afterwards. So it'll probably evolve as time goes on, but I think it's probably a good idea to go over some stuff from last time first. So, first of all, I think last time we had left off saying that pretty much any and all questions at any point were the right way of doing the stream. So I'll just, I guess, reiterate that point. Like, if you have any questions from last time or about stuff that you want to know about this time, or about topics that you wanted. Actually, I have some. Let me bring up this site. So I made a few links that people should know about. I made a subreddit for questions throughout the week, and we had two, which is great. Except I was notified about them, so that wasn't great. But now I know that I have to constantly refresh this page, so I made it the first tab in my Reddit app. Um, so I think what I'm going to do is I'll answer these kind of as best I can, and then I'll kind of go into them on stream a bit, and then include kind of more detailed notes on the show notes that I post afterwards. This one was basically about keyboard shortcuts, and that's like that's like a whole thing. Basically, the person just gave me permission to talk about Vim for the entire stream. So if you don't like Vim, I'm sorry, but I'm probably gonna talk about it constantly during the stream because that's the secret to all the shortcuts. Um, I updated my my thing here. Oh, another thing that we did this time is ASCII Nima. This is a pretty cool thing. Uh, what it'll give us is this like live recording down here of the actual stream stuff, or not live recording, but after the fact recording, and it's really cool because you can pause this and you can like copy stuff from here. So like I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm gonna be doing this in Tmux. We can go into that if people are curious too. Yeah, so questions here, some setup questions over here. If people still have issues with setup questions, like he had what was this? I think it's a code exp student had some kind of basic questions about like what's a path, which is totally fair. So if people have questions like that, like by all means, just ask them, and I can go into details. But and then other links from last time. Oh yeah, so this is, I think I'm gonna post a page like this each time as like a summary with a link to the video, um, some useful links that you might need, and then as much raw notes as I can kind of put here. So like the whiteboard can save itself as a PNG, which is pretty nice, and the actual terminal commands if you're curious about that. And then finally, topic suggestions. Add this one here. If someone has something that they want to actually deep dive into a bit, I think I saw one so far. The results are public, so you can just click on this and see it. I put a bunch in here to start. If you don't want to use your name, then just pick some fake name. It's totally fine. Like the name doesn't matter. Just so I would know like if the same person suggested two different topics, for example. But yeah, AngularJS is one. Yeah, that's good. We can use that. It fits in pretty nicely with using TypeScript and stuff. So I've actually never used Angular recently, so you might get to see, I guess, how I learn new frameworks. live, but I think that's probably valuable too. And I think that's pretty much it. So let me start just by one more thing. Sorry, I also created a GitHub account, and I'll just throw the code on here after every session. So I made a few updates since the end of the last stream, just in case people needed some help with some CSS stuff. But session 0, I think I might have to pull this down here. I think this is the workspace I used from last time. And okay. So in theory, I'll name this tab just NISC, and then oops, here. If I do npm run start, do I not have npm? Is it because I installed fish? Yeah, okay. So yeah, I switched up the shell a bit from last time to do something more that I could stand using. The virtual machine doesn't have any of my shortcuts and stuff, so I had to make it just like a little bit fancier, and enabled Vim key bindings here. So I'll go over. I think I'll go over that towards the end. Feel free to ask if you want something sooner. So basically, I need to do the equivalent of this in my new shell here. Config, and I have some other version of Node previously, which is not really useful. Okay. Be okay. Cool. Sorry, version. So this should bring up the stuff that I added between the last session and this session. Of course not. Did it just not start up? Okay. It's taken longer. There we go. Okay. All right. So last time we were using React, and here, I'll open this up in VS Code. We're using VS Code with React and TypeScript to mimic the sample to-do application that people just create as like hello worlds to learn new frameworks. We'd probably actually make this again in Angular if we were to do the Angular thing, because it'd be really nice to see like, okay, now I know React, how does it compare with Angular. And the worksheet should have a link to the to-do app. So this is the thing that we were making. Add a list item, another item, and I basically just did styling updates between here and there. So this is the thing that I have. And you open up this side pane with a Control Shift I, or you can just do right click and view page source. Oops. Right click and inspect element. Then toggle that on or off here. So add an item, add another item. So yeah, I don't think I did this yet. Yeah, I didn't do that yet. But so I had an idea of what to do this time, although I think I might change it up a bit. Did I have the next worksheet here? Yeah, so okay, the idea was to follow up on the first one and to make it actually persist across page loads. So I think what that means is that we might try and use local storage in the browser, or cookies, or probably local storage, and then we could probably leave off there with being in a pretty good position to maybe add a backend to it. So that's something that people had expressed interest into, is try and find out what they could actually, like, more of like a full stack application rather than just being like an isolated sandboxed browser app. And then this was like extra stuff here. So I think we'll probably end up getting, I think that'll probably be fine. Also, it looks like part of the learnings from last time for me were it's probably going to be hard for people to actively engage while I do the coding. It seems like I can understand that. Like it's very hard to try and take it all in. It looks like some people are actually kind of going back in time and rewatching stuff that just happened a minute ago, just so they can like catch it. So maybe this won't be kind of like the live interactive thing that I thought it might be, but I just want to make sure that people are still, or they can definitely ask any of those questions. So I might end up maybe going a little bit faster or slower. I guess I'll need feedback to know if that's a good idea or not. But so before we start, here, I'll type this in, so I know there's a delay. Yeah, so any questions or issues from last time, then definitely just let me know now. We can go over a bit of it up front. Otherwise, I think I'll just get ready to do to add some persistence to this app, and I'll go over a little bit too of some of the CSS stuff that I did in between now and then. Actually, let me just go turn off my heat real. Cool. I have 40 minutes left on video 1, so maybe some code missing. Cool. Yeah, if that's the nice part about doing this is it's recorded, so you can totally work on your own time. And if you have questions later on, you can ask it here, or you can ask it in the Reddit. Why TypeScript? I guess it kind of depends on what you mean by why. If you're wondering why, like what is it about TypeScript that I like a lot, I can answer that. Like I'm not saying that TypeScript is like the most technically superior, the only real option for doing front end development or anything like that. Like there are lots of different options. But why I like TypeScript, there's a few reasons. First off, from creating large applications in JavaScript, the big difference between TypeScript and JavaScript is that you have types in TypeScript. So like if this was JavaScript, for example, you wouldn't know that your app state. So like over here, this dot state dot foobar. This is an error in TypeScript, whereas it's not an error in JavaScript. JavaScript has like a ton of really weird things that that TypeScript gives you tools to manage, and despite just so there's one problem of types or no types. People can argue about that. Some people like no types. I like types because it gives me some security in my code. But even within the typed world, I like TypeScript a lot because you can do so many cool things with it. So I'll just give you an example of like one cool thing you can do with it. It's probably a little bit advanced for what we want to do, but I actually put this as a suggestion in the topics as well. I think it would be really fun to go over this because this is part of the fun part about TypeScript. So let's say that we have, I'll make a new component here. We have a class, foo component extends react.component. Let's say that we have our own types that it takes in for the props. This is all from last time too. So like name, say it's a string, which even this so far is great to have. TypeScript can't even, JavaScript, you don't get this information. It's just kind of like documentation convention. VS Code can try to infer it for you, but it's not. There's no guarantees. Foo component. So I've got this component, and I've got this reference to the props. TypeScript has this cool thing. Type. I can make types that extract parts of other types, which is like something that it's like very strange that you don't get in a lot of other languages. So you can do extract prop types of t is equal to, and then it's like this. It's kind of like this if else statement, but all in types, and all of this gets deleted at runtime because it's not JavaScript at all. T extends a react.components of infer u, then u, else we'll say foo. And finally, I can do type props of foo component is equal to, and this should be equal to the foo component. Props should be equal to this. Yeah, foo component props. See, like I don't even need a reference to the type, and I can figure it out dynamically just through other types, and it'll do like operations on types. And having union types, which is like options is equal to a or b, then I can say const, something is of type options, and it's equal to c, and c is not assignable to the type options. In JavaScript, it's like, fine, go ahead. In TypeScript, we actually can have some confidence, so we're like, hey, it'll actually force you to do the right thing there. So there's lots of cool things. That's all kind of like advanced stuff, not so super important for just like getting started, but there's a lot about TypeScript that really low floor to get into it, and a really high ceiling to like master it, which like I love stuff like that. Video games like that are good too, like you want it to be easy to start and hard to master. And also, Angular also uses TypeScript, so it's relevant. Yeah. So if you don't care about all the cool stuff, then at least it's useful. Okay, so let's just give a highlight of some of the changes that I made from before. And if people don't use GitHub very much, then this will be, I guess, a good intro to GitHub, which is like a great tool. Also Microsoft owned. I used to hate Microsoft, and now I'm using VS Code, TypeScript, and GitHub. It's terrible. So this is the repo that I had, and I'll put this into the chat. Hopefully that's, of course you can't actually click it. Still can't. There you go. Nice. Yeah, so we can go to the commits from last time, and we can see everything that I did. I did it on my personal account because I was just being lazy. But yeah, this is the first change I made. You can see exactly like all of the changes, change by change, as I made them. So a lot of CSS stuff. I guess the high level takeaway, if you go and look at this afterwards, is whenever you do some CSS, start with asking yourself, how can I use Flexbox? And I know that obviously you may not know what Flexbox is, but that's the thing to start Googling there. It's like, how do I use Flexbox to make this layout the way I want to do it? My sophisticated ID generation function. By the way, this is also like where like half of our coding time goes when you have a job in a company afterwards, doing code reviews for each other, like looking at these diffs and just like saying like you know, why did you do this, that kind of stuff. So feel free to make comments like that in here if you have a specific line you want to point out or something. But yeah, just new components using the same tools that we did before. So it should be familiar to people. Yeah. So lots of small changes of this nature just to get it to the point where it looks kind of nice. I feel like it looks pretty close to the original. Yeah. So these don't do anything yet. Okay, we can start with that. Why don't we start with we'll do when you check on this thing, it should consider it. It should change the status to completed, and then it should respect the filters. So if it's completed and you're on active, then it shouldn't be there anymore. So we'll do that. Then we'll look at making it so that when I click on reload, it saves the stuff from last time. And then we'll give a few pointers towards how do you get that off of your machine and onto like maybe another box at the end. And then we'll do some questions too. And then in the parking lot, I'll go more into like all the keybind stuff for the person I asked. That's fun stuff. So, okay. Starting off, how do we add the ability to make make this completed or not completed? Well, just like with before, we have all of this stuff over here, which is where we're keeping all of our state for the application. So it's just like one big object right now. We have our ToDo items, which is a list of things over here. We have our currently active filter, which is this, using the sweet TypeScript feature. And we have the current text, which is just the text in this box. So this is the current text. And recall from last time that we installed this React developer add-on thing, which you can just do with React developer tools on the Chrome store. It's just a plugin for Chrome. It's one for Firefox too, but I find that it works better for Chrome. So if you look at that, we can even see like the real values of all of these things as we're using them. So if I click on the app, then over here, like we can see like the actual values, which is like, this is part of why I really like web development. Like you get this like awesome tight feedback loop. Like if this was like a binary, if it were Java or like an Android app, you'd have to set up like a debugger, and the debugger would have to connect to like the emulator, and you'd have to do all this nonsense to get even to the state where you can do this stuff. Not to say that you can't get the same effect, but the web had it first. Yeah, so we see that there's these two things. It'll even show us what they are. Objects that have an ID, a selected value. Okay, so I added selected from last time. Yep, right there. Good for me. If I add another one, I'll add that. This updates. Now I've got 3 items. This is the current text. That's one of them. But when I check it, nothing changes. Like you'd expect that to change to true. So that's the first thing that we're going to have to do. So first things first, we'll say we'll actually add a handler to that box so we can do something when we click it. Because right now it's just nothing happens at all. So that is going to be in my to-do item, if I recall. Yeah, here it is. So the to-do item is going to have to take an on completed callback. It could take, so we can do that, or we could make it take an on state toggle callback, and then we can supply the completed. We can say, was it just marked as done? If we do that, then we'd have to also say on uncompleted or something. We need 2 of them, whereas if we do it like this, we can just use the same one, and we can supply the Boolean value as an argument. So I'm inclined to kind of go that route. It seems like it's more of what we need here, because we'll need to know if it was marked as done or if it was unmarked as done. So maybe we'll just do it that way. Yep, that's true. I have an error now. That's okay. So here, the checkbox on change is going to be this dot props dot on state toggle. So I don't actually know what this gives me when I hook up to it. So I'm going to do an experiment to figure that out. So I'm going to say on checkbox change. I'm just going to make a little function in here, and I'm going to say debugger. This is like the biggest tip that I can give anybody, the single biggest thing. Like you can put this word here, this magic word, and then the code will stop there. It's beautiful. It's great. So this dot on checkbox change. Okay. So just for now, just to make it happy, we're just going to give it a no-op function. Yeah. Okay, so with the change that I just did, it should stop in here, and then I'll be able to see like what is it actually supplying to me. This callback over here. So first I create an item, and then when I click this, it should work. Oh yeah, that works. Cool. So here's some magic JavaScript stuff for you. In JavaScript, whenever you're in a function, there's this magic variable called arguments, and if you print the value of it out, then you'll get all of the arguments that were passed in, whether or not you even see them. So that's just like, it's JavaScript. So the first thing, this is the thing that it passed to me. Target, the convention, just from tribal knowledge and from experience, is that it's like an object which has a target which has a value. So I'm just going to assume that that's the case here as well. So here's a target, and it should have a value. On. That's weird. So I assume it's going to be off when it's the other way. Arguments. It's an array, so I can get the first thing out of it. Dot target dot value. Okay, not what I expect. React checkbox value on change. Checked. Okay, so I guess that's not true. I guess it's checked. Cool. Then this time it should be true. Cool. All right, so now I know how to get that thing back out. So I know what this thing is. It's an event. It's probably something similar to the other event that we had from last time. So I'm going to just go back and look at the other places where we used events. Change event is probably change event. And in here, I'll pluck out the right thing that I care about. So this dot props dot on state toggle, and I will give this callback the event dot the target dot the check. Is this a change event of, oh, okay. Checked. Cool. Okay. Feel free to ask whatever you want to at any point, of course. Now I'm just going to go back up to that fake listener that I added here. Yeah, so I was doing nothing before, and now I want to do something. So back up in my app, I have these ToDo items, and I'm listening for the check event, but I'm not actually doing anything with it. So just to make sure I can actually get it, everything's working right, I'll say on ToDo item state change, and it'll be completed is going to be a boolean. And we'll just log it out. This dot ToDo item state change. So now when I check it, I should see a message. Cool. Okay, so now back to the original problem. How do we make it so that this thing actually matters, and that we know that there's like it's checked or it's not checked? So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually do this. I think already I've actually done it a little bit wrong. I'm going to make a change. So right now, what I know is that I know that there was a to-do item that was just changed, but I don't know which to-do item was just changed. So I don't know whether or not this particular item should be shown. So I need to add some additional information to the thing that I'm supplying here. So if we go back down here, then this isn't sufficient, I don't think. we need to add a little bit more here. So let's just make a new type for it. We'll say to do item change events, and then this will have okay, start just one problem, relative. Sorry, it's killing me not having my normal tools. Settings. I have to change a setting really quick, and it's gonna look really weird, but I swear it connects back with the Vim questions from the Reddit. There we go. All right, so if I add to my settings, it's editor.line line numbers is relative. Yeah. Okay, beautiful. That's what it should be like. Okay. This is really useful when you use Vim, because all you ever care about is that you want to go 5 lines down, for example. So when you're using Vim, you don't touch the mouse, you only use the keyboard. So I say I'm hitting the number 5, and then I'm pressing J. I went 5 down. I actually don't want to. I'm gonna go 7 down. There. And now I'm gonna hit YY. Actually, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna hit W to go forward a word, and YI parentheses to yank inside of the parentheses, and then I'm gonna go back up, and I'm gonna paste it. I'll go over that later. Obviously, it's crazy. So yeah, our change event is gonna have just it'll have the same thing that we had so far, whether or not it was completed, and it'll have we need to know which to do item changed, and the way that we know which one's which is we have IDs, and we should have access. Oh, we don't have access to the ID. That's another problem. So already we have to refactor all of the bad code we wrote from last time. Yeah, so I need to know, maybe it's not even right to take in text anymore. Yeah, clearly we need to know a bit more. So why don't we actually just take in a to-do item, like we have a type for it. So maybe text is the wrong approach. And now we have to get it from to-do item dot text. Assuming that this is the, oh, that's not the right thing actually. It was whatever I called it up at the top here. To do item data. Yeah, so here. Yeah. Now we know everything about the to do item in our component. So we can pass whatever we want along. And now that we have the whole item, now we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. So I'm gonna just Control-Shift-P, format, so it looks nice. And I'm going to, let's close this. I'm going to change, instead of a Boolean here, DI parenthesis, delete inside of the parentheses. I'm going to say event is going to be of type to do item change events. Yeah, that will give us all the information that we need so far. D inside parentheses, delete inside those parentheses, and then I'll say we need to give it an ID of this dot props dot to do item dot ID, and completed is event dot target dot check. Yeah. Control-Shift-I, Yeah, that's the shortcut by default for formatting your document. Okay, so going back up here to the app, we change this. So now this is wrong. That's fine. We know that. It actually takes in now an event called what was it? A ToDo item change event. Yeah. And it doesn't take in a text anymore. It takes in a to-do item. Yeah. And now if we print this out, then every time I check it, I should see all of the information about that to-do item. So to-do item 1, to-do item 2. So when I check this, I should see an object get printed out. Yep. You can see all the stuff in it. I thought it would have had... Okay, so I didn't include anything but the ID. And that's actually, we can go more into why I did that later, but if you don't need to pass everything, the ID is definitely the right thing to pass. Assuming that using the ID, you can actually get back to it in some other way later. You can avoid having copies of the same thing in different parts of the application, and then they get out of sync. So now I know everything I need to know to add the check state, and I think we'll get to like a little bit of computer sciencey stuff when we get to the actual check state. I'll bring out the whiteboard for that. So the next problem, we have to know how to update these items so that the so that we can mark each one. Each one has a recall. We can go back to the React thing here. Each one has a selected component inside of it. So given the way that the application is right now, we're actually not in a great spot to do this in a performant way, unfortunately. And I can show you why. So let me just quickly poll how many people are familiar with big O notation. Does that sound familiar to people? If you're in undergraduate computer science, then this is something you'll be spending a lot of time on. If you're not in undergraduate, if you're doing self-learn stuff and you're doing like a web dev type stuff, this is typically what differentiates web devs from like SDEs at big companies like Amazon and Google. The interviews will focus a lot more on computer science stuff like this versus on practical applicable things like web dev stuff. So this is one way in which those two job families like drastically differ. Cool, awesome. So I'll say it from scratch because I think this is probably the like basically all of the all of the programming interviews that you would do are based around like this data structures and algorithms and big O, which is like how they perform. So let me open up the whiteboard. Okay. Can I just delete that stuff? Cool. So just a quick primer on Big O. Move it to the side. So when we talk about performance, we usually use the notation Big O notation. So some examples. If we say that we can say that something is big O of n, like this. And what this means is that it performs in the worst case. Big O means the worst case. There are other measures like we can talk about like what's the best case, like what's the worst case, what's the average case. We can talk about all those sorts of things, but typically it's a big O that we start with, and n is linear. So if we say something takes big O of n, it means that for every additional item in perhaps like let's say we have an array of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 numbers, and we want to print them out. So we say let's write a little for loop for I in my list L. This isn't even a real language. This is like some pseudocode. It also has a console.log function because it's pseudocode JavaScript. Console.log I. So this thing right here, this performs big O of n. In the worst case, in every case, this block of code will take as long to execute as there are numbers in the list. So if there are 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers in the list, then this loop will loop 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We can say, so whether or not that's bad or good depends on the situation. Obviously, when numbers are so small, like 4, it doesn't matter at all. It really matters a lot for when numbers get really, really big. But in general, O of 1 is like going to be better than O of n. That means constant time. So if we were going to do something like this, if we had a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 items, and we just console.log the list itself, and let's pretend that this prints out like the string array. This is O of 1 because it doesn't matter how many items are in this list. This always takes the same amount of time. So O of 1 just means that it doesn't scale with the size of the list in this case. It could be the case that this just takes so long, like it's a constant time number, but the number is so big that it actually is worth it to use this instead. If we had our choice between 2 different ways of doing something, and one was O of n, one was constant time, like that's possible. That could be the case, but typically it's not the case. So okay, why did I talk about this? This is not only is it very useful, and people should have a lot of questions on this, but it applies to our current problem. So I'll siphon it off, move this up. So we have a similar problem right now. If you see over here, we have a list of to-do items, and in here I have an event with an ID in it. So given what I currently have, I have items equals, I have to-do 1 and to-do 2. And now I have an ID, to-do ID is equal to 1, 2, 3. And I have a completed Boolean, true. I'm just talking about the things that are in this event right now, because now I have these 2 things in the event. Here I'll do, these are in the event, and this is in the state of the app. I have this information, and I have to find out which one of these things has to be updated. So what do I have to do? Since I don't have any way of getting at these items directly now, what I have to do is I'll have to say, like, for item in items, if item dot ID is equal to ToDo item ID, or sorry, ToDo ID, then item dot ID, oops, item dot, nice, item dot completed is equal to completed. And this is bad, and it relates to what we were talking about above, because now every single time I get a to-do item, let's imagine I had 3, 4, oops, where's my whiteboard? Now if I had 4 items, that means that I have to go through this thing 4 times potentially just to find the right item so I can mark it as updated to the new state. Not to mention, I can't even do this. This is actually bad in React. Impossible. No. Because I have to use this .set state to change state, so I can't even do it directly. But put that aside. It means I have to do 4. So this is O of n, which means that in the worst case, this will take as long as there are 1, 2, n equals 2. It will take as many tries as the list is long to make this update. Now we might get lucky. We might find out that it's the first item, and then we can, make some optimizations and say, like, if it's the first item, then don't do the rest of the items. But the big O is only concerned with the worst case. So that's not good. So we're gonna have to change our approach. Well, we don't have to because it doesn't matter because we have 4 items, but we should change our approach. It's the responsible thing to do. So one way of getting around this, especially in a React application, is so we have this state up here, and we should start adding mappings. Maps are great. Regular JavaScript objects are maps. They have maps as well. So let me just show you the concept of a map. If you know JSON, then you know a map. This is like A goes to 2. Maps are nice because, in general, so if we say that this is our map M, if we say M of the string A, this is almost always constant time. So here, or near constant time. We can consider it constant time. It depends on a ton of shit. Like the language, could we make it a little bit different? If the language uses something called immutable data structures, this might actually be like, it might actually scale with the size of the list, but it might scale like so well that like you can just consider it effectively really, really fast all the time. So these are nice because we get around this problem. So now we have a way of saying, given this, get me the value. So how do we apply that? In our case, we can do something like we can add a map to our global app state, and it could be something like a map from in TypeScript. This is going to be a record from a string to completed. Sorry, that's not true. To Boolean. I might regret this later, picking a Boolean here, but we can just refactor it again. So for example, we might say that 1, 2, 3 maps to true, and 5, 6 maps to false. And then when we want to find out if any particular item is checked or not, we would say we'll just say this is like checked. We would say, like, if we want to know if 1, 2, 3 is checked, we would just find out what the value of it is here. 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be true in this case. So that's just like a nice way to lay out your state such that you can really quickly get things, which is why we need these IDs around so much, because using these IDs we can actually find out all this information. Okay, so I think that's probably sufficient. Oh, and this, let me just to finish this. This would be O1, because it doesn't matter how many things are in here. Let's pretend there's 100 things. This still happens really fast. It could be 1,000 things. This is still fine. This happens right away. So now it doesn't matter at all. Right, let's actually implement it. I'm going to add a to-do. Oh, by the way, that's like the whole point of undergraduate computer science. So that was a super simplified version of Big O, and it is not strange at all to not understand it after just hearing that. So feel free to ask any questions on that, obviously, and I can recommend some books. We'll talk about it in the future, I'm sure, but it's definitely something useful to know. Completed state. We'll say this is a record. This is how TypeScript describes objects. It actually does have something called a map, but it doesn't feel. We use the term idiomatic to describe this feeling problem here. It's like this isn't the way it should be done. It doesn't feel like the way it should be done. Yeah, it's not appropriate given the history of JavaScript and how people use it to use a map in this case. I feel like because then you can't use like this nice syntax where you have like const a is equal to that. That's not a map anymore. If you want to use a key that's not a string, then you have to use map. That's why you would use a map. Yeah, so this is going to be a string to a number, no, to a boolean, or, can I do that? No, or undefined. Yeah. And we'll just say that if it's not there yet, then it's false. We'll just say that. To initialize it, here. And now what we're going to do here is say, finally, back in our original problem, this dot set state, and we'll say that the completed state, oops. All right, this should be cool. This should work. I'm gonna type CS curly bracket parenthesis. And that stands for change the surrounding curly brackets to a parenthesis. See that? And it just changes them for me. Pretty cool. And this is going to be a copy of whatever was there before. So this dot state dot okay, let's ignore the copy first. Let's just set the thing we care about. The new completed state is going to be event.id. So whatever the ID was, this is just the syntax for how do you use a variable as the key. You have to put a bracket around it. And it's going to be event dot completed. Yeah, cool. And we want to make sure that we don't lose everything else that was already in there. So we'll just say copy everything from the other one, the old version, into this one too. So that's you do ... in JavaScript to do that right now. They just added this pretty recently, within the last couple of years, which for JavaScript is actually a pretty long time. This dot state dot completed state. Yeah. So at this point, we should be capturing all the information that we need. So if I say to do 1, to do 2, if I go here and I go to the current, whoops, my complete state, right now has nothing in it. That's true because I haven't checked anything yet. So I haven't added anything yet. If I say check, then all of a sudden this thing, which has an ID of that, is true. And now if I uncheck it, it should be false. Cool. Now if I add this one, true, false, true, false. That's good. So the next step is to actually use that information. So we do that by, first things first, I don't think we have the ability yet to even tell our ToDo items that they should be checked or not checked. So that's the first part. That should be simple. Here. Yeah, so we'll test, I think, value, or is it checked? I think it's checked. Checked is equal to true. Does that work? If this works, then every new checkbox should be checked. Cool. And it should stop me from unchecking. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So then we have to make sure we can accept this information from the parent where we are up top. So we'll call it completed. So we use the ToDo note language, Boolean. And this is going to be this dot props dot completed. And we just have to supply something over here, back it up in our application. And how do we do that? Well, we do it using this technique that we just learned about over here. We say completed is equal to this dot state dot completed state for whichever ID this is. ToDo item dot ID. And it's going to complain because this might return undefined for us. And this thing says you need to actually make it a Boolean value. So I'll just show you the series of steps that I'm going to take to do this kind of like the nice idiomatic way. So first, Vim lesson, D, I, curly bracket, delete inside the curly bracket, go up here, and P to paste. So I can say const is completed is equal to this. This is going to be a Boolean or undefined. Over here, we'll say is completed is equal to true, then true, else false. And that's fine. That works. It's kind of ugly, so to get around the ugliness, what we would do is another Vim keystroke, D, T, right curly bracket, delete to the right curly bracket. We can do this, or false. So now, if this thing ends up being undefined, then it'll evaluate to false. This is a Boolean operator. Let me know if you want to talk a bit about how this works. I'm not sure if people are interested in that or not. And then the last iteration on this trick is this looks kind of messed up, but bang bang. This is pronounced bang when you're a programmer, not exclamation point. So this coerces this thing into a boolean. So just to show you an example, if I have a let my boolean equals variable equals some string. If I say bang variable, this means not variable, so it comes out as false. So if I were to make my variable equal to undefined, which is what it is in the case of our key, then if I do not variable, it makes it the opposite, which is true, because undefined counts as, it's a falsy value in JavaScript. So once you understand this, the next part is okay. You just do it again and make it back to what it was, which is false. So given like a falsy value, like null or undefined, if you bang bang before it, then you're converting it to a boolean of the opposite value, then converting it back to the opposite value, which is, there's only two states in a boolean, so you're back to where you were. You'll see this. It was weird when I first saw it, but it's okay. So what did we just do? So we should have a to-do item that counts as completed. So yeah, so now in our state, it's completed. Cool. So actually, I can change it here too. False. And now it's not completed anymore. Pretty cool. Why is that important? Because we want to do this thing, right? So if the current filter is active, then you shouldn't see completed items. That's what this means. So that means we have a few ways that we can go about doing this. Here. So instead of mapping over all of the items every single time, so I'm in the app right now, and in the render to do items section. See, we're just dumping out every single one of these things every time. So one thing that we can do is we can say this.state.toDoItems.filter. This is a very useful function. It takes a function in, and that function is a test. They call it a predicate. A predicate is like a function that takes in something and returns a true or a false. So in this case, we want to take in a to-do item, and we return, the filter is going to keep only the things that return true. So so we want the test to be if this dot state dot active filter is equal to active, then if it's equal to active, then we want to return false for everything that's checked. So first we have to get whether or not it's checked. Const is checked is equal to this state. This is what we just did, all that stuff, the completed state, and we can give it the to do item ID. And then if it's checked, then we don't want to if we want to return basically not is checked. We want to say if is checked equals true, then return false here. Else return true. Yeah. So that's if we have the active filter active. We have the other case of very similar case, y I left parenthesis. I'm just gonna copy what I have there and paste it in here to start with, and we're gonna look at the completed case, and we're gonna say that we need this variable for this block too. If is checked is equal to true. I'm just writing out all the explicit checks just so people don't have to worry about like understanding like the cool shortcuts. So if checked is true when it's on the completed filter, then you want to show it. Otherwise, you want to hide it. Yeah. And if it's on the all filter, then just return true all the time. So this gives us ToDo items to show. And we use this thing instead of the oops. We'll use this list. So if I click on this, then I should see this go away, if what I just did was the right thing. Hey. And if I click on this, then these things should go away. Nice. Cool. Should this update? Huh? Oh, but it should only be the left items. Okay, so it's supposed to just be, it's supposed to exclude the checked items. Here. Here. Where did I get this from? ToDo count. Okay, so when I supply this with the count, it should respect that as well. So is this happening back up in the app as well? It is. So I'm going to pull this out into a function because I need this information out in another spot. Get filtered ToDo items, and I'm going to D17J, delete 17 items down, and then I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to DT equal sign, delete to the equal sign. Actually, get rid of that too. I just want to return this. And instead of this variable now, I'm just going to call that directly, this.get filtered ToDo items. So now I can get the filtered ToDo items, which is very nice. So I'm going to call it twice, and after we finish this, we'll look at maybe the performance impact, and maybe that could be like a follow-up, like make this actually perform a bit better. It's the spot where I'm supplying the ToDo count. There. Okay, so instead of the whole length, what I want to supply is di curly bracket, delete inside the curly bracket, this dot get filtered items dot length. That should change now. Nice. Yep. Works. Okay. So this gets us pretty close. Let's just talk about okay, so in the time that we have left, why don't we say we're going to talk about why that might not perform so well, and then really quickly just persist this to the web storage so we can reload it every time. And then I think we're done. We'll go over some questions at that point. Shouldn't take too long. So first things first, why don't we over here git status. So this is a good way to add your changes to Git. Git add -p is git add patch, and it lets you see every change, and you can approve it or you can reject it. So yeah, keep that one. If it's too big, you can press S to go smaller. So yeah, keep that. Keep all that. Yep. This forces you to, if when you're working, like you have to create code reviews before you push code, and like this will make you like reevaluate all the changes you just made. Like, do I need this? Was this a good idea? Git status, which I just alias to GS. So I'm going to git commit -m added completed state. Cool. And let's push. And that should be over here now. Added completed state. Cool. So if you want to see the changes, that's where they are. And the part that may not perform very well is this. Yeah. So why is that? Because we just bring this up again real quick. Oops. It's because our get filtered items is an O of n method, because what we're doing is we're going over to do item 1, to do item 2, etc. to do item n, and we're saying if the item item dot completed basically, then do something. We're doing that for every single one in the list. So at this point we're calling it twice. So it actually takes 2n to do that, but when you're talking about the big O, you don't care about this number. You only care about the biggest variable. So if it were n squared, then we would say we would keep that. This is important. But if it was like if it was n plus 7, that's not important. We don't care about that. We only care about how it scales. And if it's always plus 7, then it doesn't scale with that. It's not important for this context. If it was actually, it would be important if it were like, that would be important. So it's not like that you don't care about that at all, but typically this isn't the case. So that's gonna be something I think we can just follow up on, like throughout the week. Ask yourself, how could I avoid having to run this function twice? Let me just make a note of that. How can I avoid running the get filtered ToDo items twice? Okay. And just one quick thing for making it persist. I'm just going to Google JavaScript save state. Local storage. Okay. So this random person on Stack Overflow says that something called local storage exists. He did not lie. Cool. So my key 3. Now if I call get, then I should get 3. Oops. Cool. And if I refresh and call it again, then I should get it again. Great. This will be easy. Cool. So let's go back to VS Code, and let's say let's save the state. Should we save it after everything? So React gives us a lifecycle method that we can hook into to do this. We'll say if you want to see all the things that React lets you hook into, you can Google React lifecycle. And the one that we're interested in, there's a few that we could use. We could use this one. This is called every single time the props or the state changes. Let's use this. It's simple. So I can override this in my component. In any component, you can do a component should component update, and it gives you the next props and the next state. Okay, so next props is going to be the props that I take here, which is app props, and the next state, which is the to-do list. So you have to return whether or not it should update. So just for fun, let's return false. See what happens. So, yep, I'm spamming my keyboard. No matter what I do, nothing ever updates. So this is where you can get kind of fancy and tweak, like optimize your performance based on, should the browser bother updating because this happened versus this happened. There's a lot to go into over there, but it's good to know that this is how it works. This is what it is by default, by the way. True for everything. So it's not doing anything fancy by default. But we're going to do something weird here. We're going to say local storage dot set item, and then we'll say we need a key, as we just learned. Const storage key is equal to to-do app key. It can be anything. And to-do app key is that, storage key. And what we're going to save, can we only save strings? Yeah. Okay, so you see that's why TypeScript is good. Because like JavaScript will say like, okay, want to save that? I'll turn it into a string for you and save it. And it comes back out like that. So luckily, there's this function that exists, JSON.stringify, and it can turn our object into a string for us. That makes sense. So now when we get it back out, it's a string. So then we have this other function that we can use called JSON.parse, and we can parse a string and turn it back into the thing. So okay, we gotta do that. That's fine. JSON.stringify. Luckily, we have this great state object that we've been maintaining this entire time called this.state. Finally pays off, huh? So every single time anything changes, we're gonna persist the state. And when we're gonna use another lifecycle method here, we'll say, well, we can do it here. We can do it here. Instead of giving it these defaults, we can say let's say const persisted state is equal to local storage dot get item of storage key. This could be a string or null. So if the persisted state is null, then we'll use our state. If it's not null, then we'll say that the state is equal to the thing that we just turned into a string and shoved in there. And this should be all you need to persist the state, in theory. So we'll see. So now, if I refresh, I should see these again. Yep, it even keeps this. Was that how it was before? Oh, that's a cool bug. Looks like oh yeah. Okay, so I'll leave this as an exercise for you as well. Fix that persisting bug. Find out why it happens, and make it not happen. Basically, it should be interesting at the very least. It'll be a good test of whether or not like you understand these things. And then I'll give you the answer next time. It's fine. Like or ask on the Reddit. But it's good to have like little problems like this just to test your understanding. Okay, so what we do, we added some state. We went over some performance stuff from Big O, and we got some bugs to fix. Let me git status. Yep. Git add -a. Git commit -v. We can do it like this too. And then if you do -v, you can see all the changes down here. So what did I do here? Oh, just so you know, there's also like there's like a right way to do Git messages, and if you use Vim, this is Vim right here. If you use Vim, then it should give you highlighting as well to make you aware of like the good and the bad ways to do it. Typically, it's like a very short summary, an empty line, and then like paragraphs that fit into like a certain character width. So added the ability to check, uncheck. Oh, whoops! No, that's not what I did. To persist the state of the application. You see how it just turned white from yellow to white. If I keep on going, and also did a bunch. See, now it's red. You should be back here if you can. There, and nothing should be on that line. Then down here I can add more, like this adds the ability to persist the application state by storing the top level state as a string in local storage. And Vim has modes, so if I'm in normal mode, I can press colon, and that's this down here. Normal mode is executing commands, so if I say :W, enter, it saves it. There's insert mode, which I press I to go into insert mode, and then it's a normal editor again. Like now I'm just, this is text. But now if I press escape, I go back into normal mode. And this is when people feel like they're trapped in Vim, they don't know how to get out. But this is, for the most part, there's there's two modes. There's three. Visual mode is if you're in normal mode, you press V, and now when you move, you're just highlighting stuff. But you can press escape. If you're in doubt, spam escape. So I'm in normal mode. I'm gonna do :WQ to save and then quit. Cool. And I'm gonna push. Okay. I think it's probably a good stopping point. So I'll put that in chat just because the delay. So I think, do I have anything to say at the end of the stream here? So I've got some like chore items that I have to do just to generate the notes, but I'll hang around for a bit, and if people want to ask questions on anything that we covered or make further suggestions, remember, I guess there's always on here there's this shouldn't there be yeah, topic suggestions. Yeah, this is the other place that you can do it, but yeah, that's a good stopping point. So I'm going to work on creating that worksheet, but it would definitely be a good like a sanity check to try and fix those two bugs that we found. And those two bugs are how to avoid. Okay, this isn't a bug; it's a performance issue. How to avoid running that get filtered ToDo Items function twice, and how to fix the persisting bug. Like for some reason, if I refresh this, if I press enter and then refresh this, it's not there anymore. So if the last thing that you do is add a to-do item and press enter and refresh, you'll see a bug. And I spread some of the Vim knowledge throughout, and I interspersed it throughout the video. So basically, that was from where was it? Here. Yeah, this one. This question. Yeah, this is on that subreddit that we have for the questions. He just asked about all those keybinds, and the answer is Vim. It's the best. And if you see keybinds in VS Code, it's because I have the Vim plugin. And I also have the Vim plugin. Do I have it here? No. I do in my personal browser. Everywhere I go, there's a Vim plugin. So that's the secret. All right, I'll hang around for a bit, see if there's any questions. Otherwise, GG. Cool. Okay, so Christian, I'm reading your comment there. Self-learning Java. Yeah. Uh, if I recall, learning. So I started off with learning Python, and the second semester I started learning Java. And I remember looking. I remember um, trying to memorize um, public static, public class foo, public static void main args. So this string array args. That I was looking at this. I was like, oh my god, I'm never going to learn this language. So it went away super fast. It's just a matter of time. The first language takes the longest. The second language is like half the time, and then like you're set. So it is just a matter of time. You're right. As for the computer science stuff, um, you'll have to decide for yourself how how much time you want to spend on it. I can tell you that if you know it, it definitely opens up a lot more doors. Um, if uh, what might be a good idea, let me see. Um, let's see. This is one strategy you can use. Um, this is the book that I used to go over and link to cracking the coding interview. This book will basically gives you like a bunch of interview questions, and each one of them, like you'll have to know something from computer science likely to solve it. So this is like a good excuse to like pick out a topic. Like, okay, like what do I have to know to answer this kind of question? You can even, if you want to, you can like get it. You can send me whichever question you're looking at, and we can talk about that too. That's a good way of doing it. This is just a good like excuse to pick a topic and learn it. Um, the one book that I would have as like a reference manual, I found this one really useful. I think it's just called Algorithms. Yeah, this is like the algorithm Bible. Super useful. I have it right there actually. Um, it's just I wonder. Here, let me grab it. I can just show you what it looks like. So this isn't like a curriculum or anything. It's like basically they have all these sections. Like here, this one is this is probably gonna be terrible. Fibonacci heaps. Like I don't know what that is. I'm guessing it's a heap that uses a Fibonacci sequence in some way. But they just have like sections on things, and then they have like pseudocode, and they're like, this is what this thing is. So they have like thing, fake code, and then they go things like that. It's like a reference. This is not the thing to use to get started, but this is really handy to have on hand for like, you know, okay, once you understand the basics, like here's a new thing. What's it? What is it? And how can I implement it myself in code? Um, I'll put a link to that too. Link to algorithms. gonna see if I can finish this stream recording. I'm excited about this actually. This is a really cool tool. That's super cool. You can't scroll though. Just some other questions. Cool. Well, first come, first serve for the time, so I guess we'll keep it like this. Yeah, I'm willing to play around with the time for sure. I don't know, like what's best for people. Like maybe I'll alternate between early and late. Hard to say. If it were another time, Eric, would it be earlier in the day? Is that what you're saying? Um, hmm, okay. Why do people like prototype better, although it seems more limited? That has a couple of questions hidden inside of it, and a couple of assumptions. Um, so I assume that's the same question as uh, of those people that prefer prototypes over classes. Why do they prefer prototypes over classes? Because there are lots of people that I've actually kind of surprised because I don't meet people very often that prefer prototypes over classes. But there are some things to like about them. Um, they're really simple. Uh, like in a language like Java, you you have like very limited ability to kind of inspect the like the state of the classes. So you have reflection, and they have to make those APIs for you. But in JavaScript, it's a little bit more transparent. So you can say like um, so class is like a wrapper over prototypes. Class foo bar. Say okay, so f is equal to new foo. So f dot prototype. Is it available to me? I guess not. I think they call it proto here. Yeah. So this is a prototype. So f2 is equal to a different foo. And f dot proto no dot bar is equal to f2 dot proto dot bar. See, so prototypes and classes and functions, like they're all very accessible. They're just like different fields on different objects. So in that sense, it's very transparent, and it's very easy to kind of hack if you want to. So there's like more power that it gives you. I'm just trying to like go through like why someone might even think to prefer them actively over classes. It's definitely true that there's like some fucked up shit you can do. So be careful about that. Like I can do function bar is equal to console.log, totally different thing. And I can say f dot proto dot bar is equal to this new function I just made. And then I can say f dot bar. Nope, can't do that. Well, I can do it another way, but the point is you can change here. I do foo dot proto dot maybe they're like making this harder to actually screw up, but you can change the prototype of something at a really base level, like a object, and you can inject a bunch of extra stuff in there. I don't know that that's a good answer for why would someone prefer it. I think there's no reason to prefer it. I don't prefer it. For the most part, it was an obstacle. I just had to like learn how it worked and how it was different from Java. Java is definitely more structured as well. So I can't actually advocate for it. I like it's not one of the reasons I like the web. I like the web because it's very transparent and accessible, and it's very easy to work with, and it's changing really fast. Like those are the things I like about the web. I would never put prototypes on that list, so I have to see a specific argument for prototypes to actually understand why someone might prefer them. Over maybe what they really mean is they prefer like a dynamic language, or they prefer the web as a runtime, or something like that. Or maybe what they're really saying is they hate Java. Hard to say. that's how prototype works. Yeah, like um, if so every object has a prototype, and if I say f dot foo, what it tries to do first is it says, does f have something called foo? If not, then does f dot prototype have something dot foo? And then it keeps on going further and further up the prototype chain. That's how like inheritance works with prototypes. So it's different. If they like that, then yeah, right, yeah, yeah. You can make your subclass, just give it the same prototype as your superclass. But honestly, like that's not something that we do very often anymore. Um, yeah, nowadays, like more often than not, like we don't even use the prototype directly. And when you use a class, like in the context of React, like you see what classes look like class, my component is equal extends React dot components. Like this is what we're typing most of the time. Um, so like we're using extends now. We're not really touching the prototype directly anymore. We're using things like Babel so we can write like newer JavaScripts before browsers support it. Like this feels to me like more like a conversation that happened more often a few years ago, for better or worse. Like it's definitely true that JavaScript doesn't have classes like this, so it's confusing that they call it a class and it's not the same as a Java class. But it's very rare for me to see people using prototype directly anymore. So that's why I'm like I have to see what the person was saying to know exactly what they were talking about. Like maybe there's some environments where you don't have access to like this stuff, but I don't work in those environments, so fortunately, I'd rather not have to use the prototype directly anymore. That was rough. Cool. Um, cool. Okay. Well, I think that's good. Um, See ya.